Alright, good evening folks. It's build number 92 of 1088 XEL. I'm going to pivot this down just slightly so you can see the machine a little better. So as usual, we're going to boot this up, run it through its paces. You may be hearing some noise in the background. Apologies. I'm printing some shells on a couple of the 3D printers, and I've got to set this one up later tonight, but that's the noises you hear. So let's go back to this. Alright, so pan up just to here there. Okay, so as usual, we're going to start up with the graphical operating system. Your standard splash screen. You can turn this on and off. I haven't said that before, but you can turn it on and off. This is just to show you that the mouse operates. It's on a white surface, so let's see, that's better. We put it on a black and white surface or a colored surface so it has some gradation. It's a little better. This is just the standard mouse that I use. It's a wireless mouse. It is a PS2 mouse. The model number you can see right there. You can see it a little bit there. And you can get it off Amazon or eBay. All of these are pretty easy. Just make sure that you get the PS2 version and not the USB version, because the USB version won't work. This is the GOS on S-Video. I'm going to change it here to composite. You will notice a definite degradation in video quality. And then let's pan up here, and we're going to go to the DVI that's installed. So right now that's the Mac Mini with Respect. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's look at the graphical operating system on DVI. And it is very sharp. Now, as I've said before, this is just an old LG 42. It happens to have VGA in the back, so that may be a factor of why. If you look down here, you will see it's just hooked up via DVI to HDMI adapter. The Sophia does not work on my Sony 3D TVs, so your mileage may vary on your TV. That's the only other TVs I have are Sony 3Ds. Maybe when I unsell my soul to Sony, then I will get a different TV. Alright, so that works well. You can't see it here, but I'm gonna scroll in. If you notice right there, that is your mouse select switch. It is currently set on red, and that will allow you to access the PS2 mouse port, which is right there. Okay? To change it or turn it off, just press the button right below it, and it cycles from the port 1 to port 2 for green and off. You just keep pressing the cycle through. The reason why you want to leave that off is that since it's sending input, so if you have a mouse connected, it will send inputs to the joy port. So if you're playing a game or if you're in the menu system, then it will send some random, well, not random, but it will send signals to that, and you'll wonder why you can't use your joystick. Okay, so I'm going to take the keyboard, which is again just a standard PS2 wireless. I'm going to hit F12, and we're going to sometimes with all the wires it doesn't get the signal. So this is your startup screen. I'm going to change a couple of things. F12 gets you to the firmware BIOS menu for the Ultimate 1 Meg, which is inside. It is the main system for where you can control your 1088. The default that I leave installed is a 1 meg Rambo memory upgrade. Now, for compatibility purposes for certain software, you might change it to just a 64K machine. to a 320K Rambo or a 576 Compy Shop. Those upgrades did particular connections, and some software looks for it in particular. But this is the most compatible and the most expected. Pre-installed on here are your operating systems, standard XLOS, the Atari 400, 800 OSB, the PAL version, a QMEG OS, which is a command line OS, and then your XEGS, the XE Game System OS. Okay. Here in the basic slot, you've got Basic C, which is the most up-to-date that Atari released. Altera Basic, which is a homebrew version of Atari Basic. You've got the Atari Assembler Editor cartridge and the CineAssembler editor if you want to do some assembly, some machine language assembly coding. I leave it set for Atari Basic C. Here's an option. If you want Basic always on, then it's always enabled. You can always temporarily shut it off by, just like normal, holding the Option key, which on your keyboard is F7, and I'll give you a map that maps out all the keys. Or if you want the default for Basic to be off, just press Enter and it changes that way. Okay. The XEGS ROM only goes on if you change it to the XEGS operating system, and then boot. And you can install, if you burn the ROMs, you can install XEGS cartridges in there. You also have to set the jumper on the UMB. So let's put this back to XL. And the way that I enable the GOS or Spartados is to turn the GOS off, I enable Spartados. To turn the GOS on, I enable the GOS. And that automatically does that. The reason why I say it like that is you could do this, both are disabled, but it's going to boot and you're not going to be able to get to Spartados, and that kind of eliminates a good portion of this. Alright, the arrow keys are what moves us from screen to screen. You can set the system date and time here, but you can also set it on command line with the command date and the command time. You don't have a VBXE installed, so that's disabled. You do have a stereo pokey, and you do have a GTI V-gate, which is especially important since you have a Sophia, because it eliminates the overscan that might be present on DVI or RGB output. PBI BIOS is parallel bus interface. It always needs to be enabled to access the compact flash. I've enabled your hard drive. The D5 is what I usually set for the default at the boot drive, since you've got compact flash installed. This assumes that D1, 2, 3, and 4, or A, B, C, and D are floppy drives. They don't have to be present, and this is just a default. You can change it to anything you want. If you want to redirect it to boot to a different drive, you can do that. The system will look, or Spartados will look for the config.sys file on drive 5. You can turn this off or change it if you want. This is to prevent anything writing to the hard drive. If you want to hot swap your compact flash cards, which you can do, then you would press shift and reset at the same time, and that will force the system to look for a new compact flash in the system. I leave it disabled. This is only if you had a dual drive, which you don't, so just leave that disabled. High-speed I/O is set up for the floppy drives and the SiO2 PC, which we'll get to in a second. This is just your standard information. You know that the BIOS was last changed by FlashDash Cat in 2018. It is set up for the 1088 XEL with your compact flash. And you know that it's an NTSC machine. There's no VBXE, but you do have stereo. Right? These are some shortcuts that you can enable or disable. If you want to force a cold boot, like have the system jump through E477, then that you can enable that. I just do a power cycle. If you don't like the boot logo, you can turn it off. This will shut off the ability to flash the ROM in the UMB and in the SDX ROM location on the U1MB. It's just a safety thing. I leave it enabled because most people figure it's enabled. You can change the color if you want of the screen. My default is 9, just because I like it. You can change it to whatever you want. Sound is also enabled, and the screensaver, if you leave it too long, the 1088 logo will come on and bounce around the screen. This is for access for Rapidus. If you ever installed this 65816, yes, upgrade, then that allows access to it. These are keyboard shortcuts. If you just want to save any changes and exit, it's X. The thing is that you can select these with the arrow keys, or you can press any of those keys at any time on any screen and it will go to what you want it to do. For example, I could go to the loader by pressing enter right now. What I could also do is press it here. We've made changes, so we say yes. And the reason I want to go to the loader now is that I want to show you additional things that you can do with the compact flash drive that's installed. Sorry for getting in front here. Okay, I want to scan up just a little bit here, sorry, so that you can see what's going on. So right here is just a series of test programs. I want to show you a couple of things, but with this setup, you have the ability to put different types of partitions on your compact flash card. I generally find that SanDisk compact flash cards are the best. A lot of different ones will work. If you have questions, just let me know. I can point you to the ones that I've bought over the years that have worked and I know work, or if you want to buy one from me that's all set up, just let me know. So you set up a FAT32, FAT16, or this Atari partition table. So this and this can be accessed from a Windows machine, a Mac, or a Linux box. This is only accessed from SDX. This can be read from SDX but not written to. I'll show you that in a second. The real cool thing about the loader, though, is that you can put whatever you want on it. An XEX file, an ATR, and load that from this menu. So copy it from your Mac or your Windows box or your Linux box. Run it here. You don't have to worry about getting it to the SpartaDocs command line because it's right there for you. So one of the things we want to do is we want to test the joystick. So I'm going to boot that up. And right now I've got it plugged in to port 1 right there. And so yeah, we've got fire, we've got up, down, left, right, your diagonals. And then I'm going to take this out and I'm going to plug it into port 2. And you got fire, up, down, left, right, diagonals. I mean, I could just go like this too, but this is a purposeful movement so you know that that's working. Then I'm going to press F12 and I'm going to get back to the loader, and then we're going to go with the really cool thing about this is that you can load multi-disc games. So for example, this one here is a 2-disc game. You create a map and then load the map in the loader. What's going to happen is I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to press start. And as you can see, it's loading up the drive. Now, we want it to get to the second disc, so we need to tell it to go to the second disc. So I'm going to press the disc switch button right here, the LED light, so that you know that it's activated. Then I'm going to press enter, and you see it's loading the second disc. You can also see the access on your indicator lights. And it's a cute little video. It's interesting. It should demonstrate some of the power of the demos. It's nice. You can also load games from here. And then play them. Okay. Oh. Why doesn't it work? Because it's in the wrong joystick port. No! Get here back with that coin! Ha-ha! So, anyways, you get the point. Anyways. Okay, so what I'm going to do is power cycle the machine. And we're going to look at and verify the operability of legacy SIO and the SIO2PC. So what you're seeing here is this is my standard load up for when a BBXE is not installed. This driver here gives you access to the FAT16 drives partitions. This emulates a 80 column system, so it gives you access to some of the VBXE type utilities, or the VBX utilities, and it sort of simulates a VBXE. It won't simulate any games that the VBX needs to run, but it gets you close. Now, the con is a console driver, so you can change from a 40 to a 64 to an 80. For example, if I do con 80, it gives me an 80 column screen that it emulates through Graphics 8. The other thing is this also allows you access to SpartaDOS Commander, which is a nice menu based system that allows you to navigate the hard drive. And so it's not great, but in S-Video it looks pretty good, but in DVI it looks very nice and is very, very useful. So in composite it's not really, yeah, and depending on what kind of monitor you're using, it's not really useful. But we're going to do Control Quit, and then I'm going to change it back to Con 40. All right, so let's check drive 1. So under SpartaDOS, these are the same thing. Okay, so that's an Atari DOS disk. Let's do B. Okay, this is an ATR I've got loaded on this SIO2 SD here, which is hooked to the legacy SIO. Okay, and then C, or D3, is hooked up via the SiO2 PC. So here's a couple of things. And sorry, this is going to get a little jiggly. So right here is a micro USB connector, and I've got it connected to the Mac. So I'm going to change the screen here for a second. And show you a couple of things. Okay, so this is Respect. If you see it right there. I've got it running on my Mac in parallels, mainly because, as I've said before, the Mac version isn't as updated as regularly, and it's not really as stable as I would like it. So the Windows version is very stable, works nicely, and you can see I've got two ATRs set up. You could just as easily do an entire directory and access all of that. Now, there's some limitations. The directory's full, but you can see right there, if we go to D3, which is C, if I do a directory, I'll set this down here. See, it's got some of the files that are shown in there. It's not quite perfect, but it gives you easy access. Atari Peripheral Emulator, APE, that Atari Max does for their SiO2 PC is a lot better. You need to do the registered version, which I have, for directories, but the Respect is more stable for everything else. So that's C and D. One of the things I want to show you here is, let's look. I'm going to do the directory again. Let's set this down for a second. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to this here. Okay, so this is accessing the compact flash drive because it's searching through different drives because of the path I've got set up. And then this is whenever the SIO chain is accessed, you're going to get read and write lights going on and off. Okay? And in fact, we're going to do this right here. Watch these and these. So I'm going to change back to B. Let's get this set up. And you'll notice it goes back and forth. These lights are in conjunction with this light here, because they're accessing the same thing. Okay? Alright, so that demonstrates the SiO2 PC, that demonstrates the legacy SIO. We've seen the DVI, we've seen the compact flash, we've seen the disk swap, we've seen the loader, we've seen the mouse, we've seen the keyboard, we've seen composite, we've seen the S-video, sound you've heard, and the only thing that's left is to demonstrate the cartridge port. Okay, so this is just a standard cartridge. Well, I mean, you know, it's from Atari age. So I'm just going to put it right here. Notice the label goes up front in alliance with this. For these cartridges, there are little nibs in the bottom there, so you just have to wiggle it just a little bit, but it goes in. And then press start. The boot logo is going to come up. again, you can turn that off, and then it will go directly into the cartridge. Now, a couple of things. Some cartridges need DOS, and so they need DOS to load. So, for example, Action needs DOS to load. So I'm just going to drop this in, stick it in like before, press start. You see the boot logo. It's going to go all the way through its boot up. And the way you access that is a Sparta-DOS command, which is CAR, and voila, we're in action. It just depends on the cartridge. Like the Ultimate Cart, it takes control right after boot. Let's see here. I think that's about it. Did the mouse select? So this is what I use. Oh, sorry. What I use for mine. And this is my unit right here. I will clean it up, take the fingerprints off, put it in its bag, and let's just get a shot of the back here. I'm just taking cables out. I don't know if you can see me. There we go. So I'm just going to take the cables out here. This adapter here I got off of Amazon. It's just your standard HDMI to DVI. Get the 21+5. So you see the pins right here. They've got the knife pin and then the 4 extra. Get that because the Sophia takes that, and you might as well get the extra input. S-Video, it's just your standard for your sound. I use a standard 3.5mm port that does stereo, and then it goes to 2 RCA jacks. You can use whatever you want that gets you there. Power supply is very specific to this unit. It's a very non-standard plug. The reason for that is because during some of the development, a couple of people using the power supply we used to have, it also was the same tip as the Atari power supply, so a couple of people plugged that in and they fried a couple of things, so we changed that. Other than that, it's good to go, and I will get this packed up and get it in the mail tomorrow. So I hope you enjoy it, and I had enjoyment building it, and let me know if you have any questions.